We're back with another Dragon Champions video. Been away for a bit since the last video, so just give you a quick update. A lot's happened in the game. We've had a new patch, we've had another character, we had the closing of the General Murdock event, so just a lot to go through right now. But just want to focus on a couple of things. So where we last left off here, if you look at my demon team, we were trying to chase General Murdock. As you see, I just finished a little bit short on getting Mega Wheel and Zentara up to 7 stars, which prevented me from getting to the last level to beat General Murdock. I did finish stage 6 of the event. It required all of the characters to be 78. And if you look at the ability pool, they were all roughly level 5 abilities. So a lot invested in the demons. Unfortunately, I didn't get General Murdock, and I also did not want to shell out about $30 just to get Zentara and Mega Wheel to 7 stars without having their abilities all maxed out. So he'll have to wait until the next round. But because of the General Murdock event and the Goblin building, you will see that before we've even had time to breathe, a couple new things have loaded into the event screen here. First, looking at this hot stuff 7-day event. Again, it's going to give you Amara Here Stones, logging in, spending energy, drag coins, purchasing. So those of you that do not have her have the ability to get a lot of hero shards here. But that's all in preparation for this Thalanne's Shadow event, where if you do some quick math, if you complete Thalanne up to level 5 in this event, you're gonna you're gonna unlock her. And if you complete 6 and 7, another 185 shards, that takes you to a 7-star Thalanne. So what do you need for this? Goblins, if you didn't see that coming. Goblins, level 70 and 80 maxed out. I'm going to go on the limb and say that if you don't have General Murdock, you're going to have a difficult time unlocking a 7-star Thalanne. Having said that, if you've seen my previous videos, I had unlocked Solius and Mordoom without optimal setups, if you will. So who knows? But if you look at my Goblin team, a faction that I had not really been focused on, it's going to be a stretch. So my goal right now is just to unlock Thalanne, not focus so much on getting her 7-star version. I think she'd be a great addition to the elf team. I'll talk about the elves in a separate video because we have a new addition to the elves, Count Delman. But let's just talk about what we're here to talk about today, which is the Goblins. So here's the Goblin faction. Thanessa is a healer that, unless it happened early on in the game, I'm about 140 something days into this game, I had not really encountered a way to get her. General Murdock we talked about. Those of you that are lucky enough to have unlocked him either the first time around or the second time around, congratulations. You have a really good character that I'm jealous of. But let's look at the Goblins as a whole, starting with the newest character, Dr. Frank. Dr. Frank, you can, with one of those banner purchases, buy his hero stones. I believe 50 hero stones to unlock him immediately for 20-something dollars. Again, not something I would do, but again, if you are a heavily invested player or you are a whale, you're gonna do you. So let's look at him. What's good about him is his healer designation. He doesn't have any other tags, clans, goblins, healers, but let's see what his kit is. So basic ability, 220% magic damage to an enemy inflicts shock for 2 turns, and if the target's afflicted by shock, they are also dazed for a couple turns. So another one of those abilities that's dependent on having a certain buff or debuff. In this case, I'm not a huge fan of those for utility's sake, but they usually work well on either themed teams, at least in my experience with a lot of RPG games, so that you are just funneling into the same mechanic. His second ability, Iron Them Flat, is an AoE, 300%, and inflicts shock for 2 turns. So here's where you get shock on everybody, is with the AoE, and back to his basic again. You can daze them for a couple turns with his basic. His third healing charge, that should be his heal, restores 350% of his magic damage to shields of all allies, and restores health to all allies equivalent to 50% of the restored shield. Again, not your traditional heal per se. Restoring shields is good if you want to build runes that are shield related. Also good in tower mode where the shields persist level to level. So I can see if you want to have like a themed goblin team that would work well. And his passive is if a goblin attacks an enemy with shock, so AoE shock them, and your teammates attack them, another random goblin will be called to assist. If that attacker is Dr. Frank, 2 random goblins will be called to assist. This effect can work once per turn. So here's where he shines, in my opinion. If you get his AoE shock down, and basically anybody attacks, at that point you're calling other goblins to assist, and if you happen to have Dr. Frank as that attacker, 2 additional goblins. So you could have 4 attacks, if I do my math correctly. Your first attack with somebody with shock, Dr. Frank assists, and then 2 other goblin assists. So that's the healer, not your traditional healer, more of an offensive healer, in my opinion, but somebody that you can farm. If you have gotten all the way to Dawn of the Order 8-12, you can farm this guy. So you can see I have 5 of him so far, and I will be farming him. But will I farm him enough to have 5 stars by the time the event starts for Thalanne? Probably not. So I'm going to quickly run through the goblin roster that's left, other than General Murdock, because I covered him in another video. We'll start with Old Lore, somebody that you should have many hero shards on, and I'm really torn because if you want to just look at stars, I can easily level him up even potentially to 7 stars. My issue with him is his ability kit I'm not a big fan of. So basic, 260%, a dazed target will have 340%. Again, a mechanic based on a debuff. His second ability attacks 3 times, specifically, similar to Sharp, I would say, is a single target DPS. Each attack deals 140%, dazes the target for 2 turns if all 3 attacks hit. So not a guaranteed daze. Third ability, he buffs himself for a couple turns and recovers turn meter. Again, very what we call selfish abilities. They're not helping your team. And then lastly, passive. You're dealing 30% more crit for each living elf in the enemy's party. Might be great for this Thalanne event. I'm assuming they're going to be elves, but for me, any passive or any ability that's dependent on another team being a specific faction, just not a fan of that. So I am going to not build Old Lore and hopefully not regret it. The ones that I'm going to focus on that you see I've starred in addition to Dr. Frank are Adam, Major Shot, Amara, Sergeant Pigwald, and Instructor Gorham. We'll start with Adam, much maligned character, but look, do you see any other tanks on the Goblin team? Not really. And he also pairs well with Gorham. So let's start with Adam. Basic ability is 80% physical damage to all enemies. Not a lot, but it is an AoE for basic. 40% chance to do a debuff. Second is 330% to an enemy and inflicts armor decrease for sure for 2 turns. His third is gaining a shield equal to 40% of his health. And his passive is a 70% chance to gain taunt at the end of a turn for 1 turn. So really you look at him and go, not ideal kit at all. Honestly, for me, he just needs to stand there and taunt. So with that, he either needs to trigger his taunt more often, or have really excessive speed, or in this case, have really low speed so his taunt persists, so he's not taking turns and removing the taunt. So I mentioned Instructor Gorham and how he pairs a little bit with Adam. If you look at his basic, maxed out, this is where you deal 240%, but you call Adam to assist if he's alive. And if it's a crit, then he gains taunt for a turn. So you can see I've already ruined Instructor Gorham for crit chance. So if you look, here's basic attacks. You're trying to make sure that Adam gains taunt every time he is critting. Piggy Cry, he's summoning henchmen. I'm a sucker for people that summon henchmen like Rantha or Mordoom. I just really like extra people on the battlefield. I've won numerous arena battles just with those demons that Mordoom summons that are left on the board, but because there's 4 of them, they just overwhelm 1 or 2 people. So he summons a half-pig henchman with 60% of his health and damage. His third ability deals 330% to an enemy, and then calls an assist. He also restores 1 turn of an ability to one of those henchmen. So, and then his last passive is increased crit damage by 40% and an additional 5% for each living henchman. So if you see where I'm going with this, I'm going to increase his ability to crit chance, which taunts Adam, and also by summoning henchmen every time he crits, his crit damage is going to go up. Sergeant Pigwald, if you're looking at his abilities, basic, it's summary of Sergeant Pigwald is he's going to focus on the weakest enemy, which I like. So if the target's below 50%, it deals more damage. His second ability, he gains a charge, basically increasing his damage by 3 times. It can't be removed, which is also nice. His third ability is a mini AoE. It picks 2 enemies with the lowest health. This is good in my opinion because it gets around the taunt. So if your enemy is always taunting and you have somebody like Tromgar or another tank that's slow that always has taunt up, such as the Pride tank, Salvador, it's really hard to get around that. But if you've got this Rocket Strike, in my opinion, a very nice ability. Lastly, his passive increases 30% physical damage and an additional 5% for each living goblin in the party, which is huge when you have a goblin team. So again, I've roomed him with damage and crit chance. Amara, who's the focus of the mini event, really nice character for me, in my opinion. Basic is not dealing a lot, but a 50% chance to deal damage to another target. Another ability, or second ability, is her AoE and inflicts burning. Similar to Corcoran, burning can be effective. It's a nice little extra debuff. Her third is a single target 340% plus an extra 60% for each stack of burning or poison. I don't have any goblins that are going to poison, but if you're burning, you're going to deal more damage. And then lastly, Amara and Thanessa. So at some point, if Thanessa is released or I get her, she's going to gain 5% of their turn meter for each stack of burning or poison on the enemies at the end of their turn, but not more than 75% of the turn meter. So she's going to be fast as long as the enemy is burning. And lastly, major shot. If you see my previous videos, I believe anybody with a leader ability is just automatically better than your normal character. So if you look at her, the leader ability, which is what you would do in this goblin team, because I don't have General Murdock, all allied goblins deal 25% more damage if there's any members of the order in the enemy party. Again, not great that it's a faction or specific order ability, but more importantly, upon landing a critical hit, goblins have a 50% chance to increase the cooldown of a random enemy ability by hit turn. So if you're loading up your goblins with crit chance, such as Pigwald, yeah, and Gorham, you're going to really slow the enemy down. His passive basically restores one turn to a random ability at the end of the turn. His flashbang is really what I believe his sole purpose of in a goblin team. He blinds and heal blocks every enemy. Blind for a turn and heal block for 2. That is massive if you're in arena, and obviously in sort of events, if you're preventing healing and you're blinding, you are gaining, in my opinion, at least 1 to 2 turns advantage. 1 for sure from the blind, but the heal block is just, especially when you're facing the AI, they're not the smartest. Maybe they fixed it, but even if they're smart enough to know that there's a heal block on, then they have to use another attack, and in most cases they're basic. Second ability here is another AoE. He switches to a battle mode, and when he's in this mode, he has a 70% chance to stun. So now you are purposely blinding and heal blocking. His AoE attack has a chance to stun. And then lastly, his basic does an AoE. So all around a very solid character that I'm looking forward to building up. So I'm going to leave it at that. This video has been very long, but build your goblins. If you want Thalanne, if you have General Murdock, you're already building goblins. So I'll check in throughout as we get closer to the event. If you look, most of my goblins are level 30, so we'll see where I end up. If you like this video, send me a like. If you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe as I'm building this channel. And leave comments below if you want to see other content. Thanks.